put a smile on your face when you're moving from place to place. Good morning. Good morning.
Welcome back to the morning show here on Tobago Updates Television, and thank you so much for staying with us. I am Adanna Combie, and in the good stuff, we have some good news coming out of the Milford Road esplanade, and we're talking about 7 new tenants at the Milford Road esplanade. We're talking about they're joining the company there. We're talking about Wendy's homemade delicacies, a beauty salon, a cafe, a cambio, a bookstore, and Jamaican jerk, as well as Bougie Bliss. We want to say congratulations, of course, to the 7 new tenants there at the Milford Road esplanade, and of course to the team there who is now managing. And we do hope that the relationship there is going to be a successful one. Of course, we do hope that patrons will come out, patronize, be a part, and the community spirit at the esplanade will come alive once again. So congratulations to the 7 new tenants, and congratulations to the management and staff at the Milford Road esplanade as well. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to begin conversations this morning in studio with none other than a former Commissioner of Police and political leader of the NTA, Mr. Gary Griffith. This morning we're speaking about the state of emergency that Trinidad and Tobago is now under, and of course his position. And we do know that when we speak with Mr. Griffith, his position is very, very clear wherever he stands on the situation. So good morning, Mr. Griffith, and welcome to you.
Good morning to you. How are you? You hear me?
Yes, I'm hearing you. Good morning. Welcome.
Okay,
and of course,
good morning.
Happy New
Good morning.
Year. Happy New Year
Thanks.
to you. And I do hope that whatever you set out to achieve this year, you are able to see great success.
Well, thank you very much.
Right, so now we're talking about, Trinidad and Tobago. It was announced on the 30th that we are now under a state of emergency as a result of escalating crime in the country of Trinidad and Tobago. And of course, we know that you're a man with a strong opinion where policing is concerned in Trinidad and Tobago, and the safety of the citizens, having your own ideas in terms of how it should be done, seeing success, having the strategies, the conversations, the resources that are necessary, of course, to ensure that we're in a safe space. And now the S.O.E. You've been very, very vocal on a lot of matters, and on this one as well. So I want to talk about your position where this is concerned.
Yeah, sure. Good morning. Happy New Year to all again. Initially, as I said, my initial comment is straightforward. It is unfortunate. Unfortunately, many politicians who have very little or no qualification, training, knowledge, or experience in law enforcement, they make decisions based on the pressure that they will get from the public. And you've seen it. We've seen it in 2011 with the UNC government, and now here in 2024, the end of 2024 with the PNM, under pressure, unable to deal with crime. So you do the knee-jerk approach for a state of emergency. My take on it is that a state of emergency is not a crime-fighting tool. It never would be a crime-fighting tool. It is a knee-jerk approach. It is a plaster on a sore. It is a temporary stopgap measure. It is not going to solve the problem. Having said that, us just continue to complain and criticize the government because they have proclaimed a state of emergency via the president. What we have to do now is to try to get lemonade out of this lemon. Criticizing the PNM and stating that, but they criticized the UNC when they did it. It is all irrelevant right now. I think the focus for us now is to be very mature, to put country first, to see what can be done to ensure that this state of emergency can indeed be of some value towards assisting us with our most fundamental right, which is that of safety and security. There are certain things that need to be put in place to prevent the embarrassment that took place in 2011. I was a national security advisor. I was asked by the Prime Minister at the time. I was in Ackley in Orlando with my family. Now going on Space Mountain, the Prime Minister asked me what my view was. I said, totally not. It is totally unacceptable. It is not the way to go, because you had 9 murders in 5 days. She didn't listen to me. There was a Minister of National Security at the time. They went with it. We saw the end result, 500 persons being arrested and most of them being released, and then the taxpayers had to pay. What is required is to make sure, like for example, we have a hotline to ensure that all law-abiding citizens can actually report any type of activity to the police in a secure area without fear of reprisal, so the police can target the real perpetrators. 2, a similar hotline or online reporting to ensure that the public can report any matter of abuse of authority by the law enforcement officials, which is something that is the norm. I was one of the youngest military officers in the 1990 period during the attempted coup. And I saw that abuse of authority both by the police and the defense force. Three, the re-establishment of that National Operations Center as recommended by the Commission of Inquiry into the attempted coup, making sure there's proper collaboration between all different arms of the protective services, both in intelligence gathering and operations. And finally, to ensure a meticulous approach for each and every operation that takes place to prevent or minimize the possibility of the abuse of power. And again, going back to the concept of the state of emergency, it should not be having a roadblock in every single place. I mean, I think it's absolutely ridiculous. It shows the ignorance of the hierarchy of the police service. If they go further north than Tobago, they will understand that no developed country has a roadblock for more than 15 minutes. It serves no purpose, but they are backward. They don't understand 21st century policing. Any roadblock that lasts more than 15 minutes, you have to be the dumbest criminal in the world to keep your weapon, your drugs, or whatever in a roadblock with and it's 15 minutes. Criminal elements have a front person, they have a scout, a lead scout. So roadblocks in developed countries, it's short and sharp. Hit, you do the roadblock and you move on. That is how a roadblock should be held. Secondly, the use of the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force, I welcome that aspect, but you don't need a state of emergency for that. That is part of their role and function. We need to ensure that there is no abuse of authority. And my final point on this is that you heard the very first the Commissioner of Police making a boast that 50 persons were held. This must not be a replica of what happened in 2011. This is exactly what Stephen Williams, he did the same thing. But he and Ella Christopher, lack of training and qualification and experience in operations. They are good in gardening, holding a key and being up on the 6th floor, doing administrative work. When it is you arrest 50 persons and you cannot turn that arrest into a charge based on improper evidence that they cannot be convicted, these same individuals are now going to sue the state and the taxpayers are going to pay. People will say, well, no, there's a clause 6 in this aspect of the state of emergency where you can't sue the state. But the attorneys are still going to do it. The attorneys are going to go to the president and they will challenge that ruling to verify if the constitutional right of my client has been infringed because you held him indefinitely for such a period of time without due process, without any proper evidence, and you just abuse your authority in the state of emergency. That is what the country would remember. I do not want the country to remember this state of emergency similar to what happened in 2011. If we do it right, we work together, there can indeed be some value.
And, talking about working together, Mr. Griffith, the call has always been, if you see something, say something. And you mentioned those hotline numbers that citizens can call to bring in information. But there's a position that citizens take. Sometimes they might say they feel unsafe. They don't trust the system. They don't trust the police officers. They don't trust, what is taking place in Trinidad and Tobago. So how do you convince a law-abiding citizen who might have some measure of evidence or who might have some information and they want to share it, but they feel as if their life might be in jeopardy if they so do? How do you get them on board? What kind of community effort do you have to make to ensure that persons, because we know that there are persons who have information who are not coming forward for fear of life?
Yeah, definitely. And that was the first obstacle I encountered as the Commissioner of Police. There was total lack of trust in the police service by the public. It was 14%. After 3 years of a lot of work, I spent most of the time doing that, transforming the police service, the image of the police service, making them accountable, measuring their performance, making sure they'll be disciplined, suspended, even charged if it is that they were involved in wrongdoing. And by doing that, that lifted the public confidence and trust for the public to start believing the police is not controlled by a rogue unit that will actually be taking full control of them. Additionally, you just have to put certain specific systems to allow the average citizen who may not have easy access to some big boy in the police service to have confidence to know that they can send information without fear of reprisal. This nonsense we've gone back to, that if somebody's breaking into your home, jumping over your wall, you have to look at for a phone number of the nearest police station with a 7-digit code. That is total madness. We're not in the 1960s. You're supposed to dial 999 and immediately it's supposed to have an immediate response. And within 5 minutes, you have someone come to your home. As it pertains to the information being passed, that is why it is I did that 482, Gary, where it is that allowing persons to come forward and send the information to me directly as the Commissioner of Police. Yes, it caused hundreds and hundreds of calls for me to get every single day. My wife didn't come home last night because she left with some friends. Cat stuck up in a tree. Yes, so I got all of those. But what I got as well was critical information that assisted the law enforcement agencies to utilize that information to be able to target criminal elements. And it's information that the average citizen would not have passed on to a police station to report it, knowing fully well exactly what you said, fear of reprisal. So I made myself fully accessible to the public. In other words, I said, if you don't trust the police, trust me. And boy, did I get information. And it played a big part towards that last year with me in office, August 2020 to August 2021, 342 murders. It was the highest reduction in violent crime in 17 years. The country felt safe. We were getting information. We were targeting the perpetrators, pegging them back, actually preventing murders from taking place, intercepting vehicles with weapons about to target individuals. So through that direct link to the Commissioner of Police personally, it allowed many persons to give that information. Also, that online reporting ensure that citizens can now go online to send specific to an area without it having to go to a police station where there could be a rogue element or some police officer who's linked to the same person that you're reporting the crime to. And the online reporting, again, provided a strong degree of confidentiality. And those are the things that can and should be done. Unfortunately, old McDonald Jacob and Earl Christopher, both out of bad mind, incompetence, or just pettiness, decided to shut down and dismantle a critical element that played a big part towards allowing the citizens to pass information on. I would strongly recommend that they need to find some avenues like that, which is why I mentioned a specific hotline or online reporting to allow citizens firstly to forward information to the police to assist them to target the perpetrators, to make the state of emergency a success, but also an avenue to allow them to report activities of abuse of authority, both by the police and the defense force, if it takes place.
Talking about that, that was going to be my next line of questioning in terms of abuse of authority. The rogue element, just the privileges that they have in the state of emergency, which allows them to enter somebody's home, arrest them, and just do whatever is necessary, I would say, quote unquote, to conduct that that task. What are some of the actions that can be taken thereafter? Let's say, for instance, somebody busts into your home, and they arrest your entire family. They take you down, and then when investigations are done, is either the wrong family, they had no right to do that, or what are the steps that can be taken against the authorities that came into your home, did that to your family, caused trauma to your family, to your household, your grandmother, your auntie, whomever is living there? What steps and actions are taken by the TTPS on those officers who have conducted that particular type of arrest?
Well, yeah, you hit the nail on the head, and that has been my concern. And I'll give you a perfect example of what you just said. Earl Christopher boost, which made a big boost, 58 persons arrested the first day of the state of emergency based on intelligence, and this is a word, intelligence pertaining to criminal activity. Why didn't you do that the day before the state of emergency? So it's one or two things that you didn't do it the day before, but you could do it the day after. One, either laziness or incompetence, because if you had the same amount of intelligence and evidence, you should have arrested them then. Why you have to wait until a S.O.E is called for you to get up now, dust your blouse, and now go ahead and do the work? No, you should have done it before. So why was it not done? So it's either you were incompetent or lazy not to get it done then, or two, the fact is that there's not enough evidence that allowed her to have done that before the state of emergency, because the state of emergency allows you to hold persons indefinitely based on any the women fancy of the law enforcement person. So you can arrest someone and you don't have enough evidence to be able to say that we know that this is going to hold. So it means that, going back to the same thing, Stephen Williams foolishly arrested over 500 persons and during the state of emergency based on intelligence. It served no purpose. It destroyed public trust and confidence in the police. It allowed many persons to be incarcerated without due process, without just cause, without evidence. There was a lot of profiling that was done, and therein lies the danger of a state of emergency. Every single thing that is done in the state of emergency could be done before the state of emergency if you have the proper evidence and intelligence. So it means that the police can very well now go ahead and be arresting persons without the evidence, and now there's a get out of jail free card by stating under Clause 6 in the state of emergency that it means that that persons who may be affected, who may be beaten, who may be arrested, their property damaged, you cannot sue the state unless it is you have your attorney go to the president and write to the president for the president to consider. That is absolute madness. That's in my view, because what it means now is that your constitutional rights of freedom can be infringed. People can damage your property unlawfully without any just cause, any due process, and there's nothing that you can do for it. Those things can't build public confidence and trust. I left it at 59%, that public confidence and trust, from 14%. In a year, old McDonald Jacob was able to successfully bring it down to 8%. Ula Christopher is going to continue to do more and bring it down even lower. I am asking that the police need to do their work, but make sure that they do not abuse their authority to minimize the possibility of what took place in 2011. Additionally, as I said, the state of emergency, it will allow you to have many operations, to allow you to have many roadblocks. All of this can be done before without a state of emergency. Having excess patrols, bringing in the defense force. You can bring in all 5,000 members of the defense force before state of emergency. That is part of their role and function. So the only thing that a state of emergency can do that cannot be done without a state of emergency is allowing soldiers to have powers of arrest, which I think is very dangerous because not all of them are trained, precepted, and are regimental police, so they can abuse their authority, but also holding persons indefinitely and going into homes without a warrant. Those last 2 points of holding persons indefinitely and going into homes without a warrant means that you're doing it because you don't have enough evidence to get the warrant, or you don't have enough evidence to hold the person. So it goes right back. The focus should be on intelligence-driven policing rather than giving you extra powers because you don't have the intelligence capacity to actually charge the person or to get the approval for a warrant. So given more authority because of not having enough intelligence and evidence it is a very dangerous thing. Unless, of course, when you do that, you can now gather enough evidence. But that is not how it works. That is how we would have seen in 2011. Very little, if any, success you got in successfully arresting criminal elements during the S.O.E. We must not do it here. But to answer your question in a nutshell, in 5 seconds, there is nothing that you can do based on Clause 6 other than if you report it, you can have your attorney write to the president. But again, this is going to be tested because the court, that this ruling is going to be tested because you are now infringing on the constitutional rights of citizens, and then you're giving them no redress other than having to go to the president.
An unfortunate situation indeed. Ladies and gentlemen, we're speaking with former Commissioner of Police, Mr. Gary Griffith. We're talking about the state of emergency here in Trinidad and Tobago and its impact. We have to go for a short break before we continue conversations, and we come back with him on the same topic. So we're asking that you stay with us. And as you stay with us, we invite you to help us. Share the live, share the live, share the live. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the morning show here on Tobago Updates Television, and thank you so much for staying with us. I am Adanna Combie, and we continue conversations this morning. We speak with Mr. Gary Griffith, former Commissioner of Police, and we're talking about the S.O.E, state of emergency that Trinidad and Tobago is now under. Of course, getting his opinion where that is concerned, and of course, the impact of the S.O.E, as it were. Mr. Griffith, welcome back to the show. You know, before we went to the break, we were talking about, you know, the impact. We were talking about the fact that any damage caused to your property or anything like that as it relates to operations under the S.O.E. I mean, there's not much you can do about it. You just have to take that and cool it, right? We want to, you know, I want to talk a little bit about what are some of the things that will lead to a decision for a state of emergency, because here you are, you're saying, of course, it's not necessary at this point in time. Of course, with the escalating crime, we're seeing that the crime level is increasing daily. And your position is we don't need an S.O.E at this point in time. What are some of the key elements that will cause a decision for an S.O.E?
Well, again, if it is that the state believes that they do not have the capability to secure a country, that they believe that the country has now become destabilized to the point that it is not controllable and they need to give extra powers and authority to the law enforcement agencies, then that is a decision made by the state. And sometimes they pay the political price for it. I think the UNC paid the political price for 2011. It is unfortunate, but again, unless it is you have individuals who have that capacity to brief, train, and advise the politicians who are mostly civilians, it then comes back and haunts them. For example, with a SOE, so people will call a state of emergency if it is that there's a terrorist attempt, there's a clear and present danger for an assassination attempt of a high-profile person, believe that there's an improvised explosive device that is going to be set somewhere. There's a degree where individuals are going to try to overthrow a country. Those are the things that you will call a state of emergency for. Now, granted, there are other cities. Sometimes you call a SOE if there's a forest fire. But the concept that we have with a state of emergency, it involves giving the law enforcement authorities extra power. And if this doesn't work, then what? A curfew. And if that doesn't work, then what? Martial law. Instead of trying to lift it, so often what we need to do is to look at what is just required, which is just good policing, effective policing, high visibility, a rapid response, putting fear back in the criminals. I remember when I mentioned, and I keep saying it, and people say, Gary, you must not say it. I will say it. I referred to somebody, these individuals who killed that attorney who was in church giving a sermon, leaving the church with his wife and his 2 children, and they killed him in cold blood that will scar those children for life. When I refer to that person as a cockroach, you upset with it? Well, then you are a cockroach as well, because you are aiding and abetting and condoning and sympathetic to me calling a cold-blooded killer a cockroach. A man that will rape a 12-year-old child, I call you a cockroach and you're upset. What has happened is this country must now select between good versus evil. This is not about red versus yellow versus blue. This is whether we want to save this country. And sometimes we become too sympathetic. So when I had comments again, 1 shot, 1 kill, there was a reason for that. For 3 years under my watch, not one police officer was killed in the line of duty, because I also made the comment, you touch one, you touch all. Now police officers are being used as target practice by criminals. They're killing persons outside police stations. It would have never happened in 2018 or 2021, because when it is you come after us, we come in after you, and you will turn into a strainer. I made it known within the law. If you broke the law, you abused your authority, the extrajudicial killing, and you did not adhere to the laws for the use of the minimum use of force policy. That is something different. But now the police officers, they are afraid to come forward and take the fight to the criminals, because they do not know if they're going to be protected by the hierarchy. That's why I will have been the first person in front in Sealots, in Laventille, in any patrol, in any operation. I'll be the first person prepared to take a bullet. That is leadership by example. That is what lifted the welfare, lifted the morale, lifted the motivation of the police officers to say, if that is our leader, I intend to do the same. Earl Christopher and McDonald Jacob, who both of them, Earl Christopher, again, we criticize the PNM, but it's Kamala Prasad-Bissessar that unanimously voted for Earl Christopher as Commissioner of Police. Julian John said she's the greatest thing since sliced bread. She has more cojones than all the others. So let us not PNM and UNCIs. This is about politicians making the wrong choice. We selected an individual who got 30% less than others by qualified international experts. She was totally lost. I had to send her on 2 years leave because she could not keep up with my pace. That is what is required instead of a state of emergency. You put a national security alert state. In other countries, you have green, amber, red, black. You escalate the alert state based on the threat assessment, and then it lifts the amount of operational capability of the law enforcement agencies. These are the things you can do without a state of emergency, and that is my point. So the state of emergency, again, it has been called. We need to make sure it can be effective, it can be successful. We need to rally around the state, but we need to also ensure that the police and the law enforcement agencies, we keep them in check to prevent an embarrassment and a disgrace of what took place in 2011.
Mr. Griffith, you said also that you hope that the state of emergency works, and you said, what if it doesn't work? Then what? And that's my question as well. Then what? What are the objectives, first and foremost, of the state of emergency? What are we hoping to achieve? And what if those objectives are not met? What is the next step or the next position the government can take in terms of curbing the crime situation here in Trinidad and Tobago?
Well, again, if crime increases, the state will be left with no choice but to move from a state of emergency to a state of emergency with a curfew. And then if that doesn't work, then what? Martial law to give the army full control? No, and that is my point. Rather than going all the way and keep escalating it to a curfew and all that, that is not what is required. I listened to Stuart Young make a comment again because of his ignorance in understanding law enforcement when they said, why don't you have a curfew in specific areas? He said, no, well, if you do that, then the criminal will just move. Total nonsense. There are specific areas in Trinidad and Tobago that will be seen as the home base, the neighborhood, the area where the gang members will house themselves, they keep their weapons, they have their meetings. You make life difficult for them in those specific areas and not everywhere else. It is similar to Jamaica. Jamaica has it, it's known as ZOSO, the Zone of Special Operations, where they target specific areas, have curfews, and have a state of emergency, given the powers, given the authorities extra powers in those specific hotspot areas. And that, by it dismantles, it makes life difficult for them. It stops the individuals from having meetings, having organizational capacity to then go outside to other parts of Jamaica. So those are the things that can and should be done. The lifting of the alert state is something else that can be done. Unfortunately, the politicians do not understand the repercussions from a state of emergency, because sometimes you have a state of emergency and then you turn into a curfew. What does that mean? It means that businesses will close. It means that it can increase cost of goods and services. It means that if businesses close, it can lead to unemployment, which is a byproduct towards inflation. All of this is a byproduct towards increased crime. So it's a domino effect. So we need to be very careful. When you call the word state of emergency, half of the people who will be coming to Trinidad and Tobago for January and February Carnival, they will now cancel their bookings. People will be reluctant to invest. It can affect the economy. Affecting the economy is a byproduct towards to increased crime. So all of these things, someone who holds the position of authority must look at it from that perspective. The UNC is the last that can actually cry and complain. In fact, they're attacking the government by stating that the state of emergency should have been in March. So it shows that if they're in government, their way of trying to deal with crime is a similar manner to what the PNM is doing now. So to the PNM and UNC, the finger pointing, it is wrong. By my personal concept, what we have to do now is forget about the concept of the state of emergency, utilize the same tools, technology, systems, policies that would have been utilized 3 years ago that peg back criminals, that made the country feel safe, that put public trust and confidence in the police service from 14 to 59%, that put crime back as the number 4 concern behind health, education, and the economy. Those are the things that can be done. The formation of the re-establishment of the Special Operation Response Team, the Rapid Response Unit, the Community Comfort Patrol, the National Operations Center, the Gender-Based Violence Unit, the Social Media Monitoring Unit, GPS tracking on vehicles, body cameras, put in the minimum use of force policy with tasers, pepper spray, making sure you have a response, reigniting the 999 system. All of the things that I put in place that was shut down and dismantled, you did not need a state of emergency. You didn't need a curfew. It pegged back the criminals. The country felt safe. That is what is required. The state of emergency, irrelevant. What you need to do is to put systems in place for good policing. This can only be done through proper leadership, good accountability, good management, and measuring performance.
And what a way to end this conversation this morning, Mr. Griffith. You know, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure speaking with you and getting your perspective on policing and, of course, curbing crime in Trinidad and Tobago. And, of course, I do hope that the conversation will continue. I do hope that there will be collaborative efforts and, you know, strategies that will, of course, show a decrease in crime and a good handle on the criminal elements here in Trinidad and Tobago. As you mentioned, good leadership, good strategies, having a good plan to ensure that these things can happen. Thank you so much, Mr. Griffith. And again, Happy New Year to you and all the best for 2025.
Thank you, same to you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we've been speaking with Mr. Gary Griffith, former Commissioner of Police here on Trinidad and Tobago, of course, talking about the state of emergency, the impact, and of course, his opinion where that is concerned. We thank you so much for staying with us throughout the entire show this morning of the morning show. This is where we have to end, but of course, this is not where we end our programming. We head on over to Good Morning Tobago, known as GMT. So, of course, we invite you to stay with us. And as you stay with us, we want you to help us share the live, share the live, share the live.